Welcome to the Grappling Grappling Rewind Podcast.
Welcome to this week on the Grappling Rewind Podcast. In this week's show, we're going to go through some BJJ news and talk about why Craig Jones is a leg locking dude, and basically how he enters in the leg locks, and kind of contrast that with a bunch of his most famous matches as we sort of break down what his game is. As always in the show, I'm your host, Maine, joined with my co-host,
Emil. So yeah, we saw Vinny's leg basically died for this episode, and we decided to take a step back and what was it about what Craig was doing that was so successful, especially when Vinny was able to shut Gordan Ryan down, who's got a little bit of muscle and size on Craig Jones, and is, I would say, at least as good, if not better, than Craig Jones at leg locking.
Yeah, that was kind of something we talked about a little off-air. I think off-air last week is Craig Jones technically, the best leg lock? I think Gordan Ryan, definitely, because he has 3 wins over Craig Jones, definitely, better in quotes there, by the numbers than Craig. But Craig has, I think, more high-level leg lock wins, especially recently, and this biggest win over Vinny last week at Submission Underground, and he literally broke Vinny's leg, kind of went, is there a better leg locker in jiu-jitsu than Craig Jones?
Right. He wasn't just able to get the tap from Vinny. He was able to completely destroy Vinny's leg, which was a difficult thing to watch, but also just technically incredible.
Yeah.
So we decided to go back, look at Craig Jones matches that are just, good Craig Jones matches, but also he's had a bunch of matches with Gordan, so we can see kind of stylistically how those guys match
3 matches. With Gordan. So one quick side, again, we are in quarantine here in Baltimore, Maryland, so the show is going to take a slight audio hit. We're doing the best we can. I'm going to fix a lot of it in post, but again, once we're out of quarantine, the show will go back to the normal audio quality. I just like to caveat it every week, hey, we're doing what we can. We're still bringing you the show because we love doing this, but Emil is in his house literally recording off a Wi-Fi hotspot on his phone because his internet is down.
Yep.
So that's what we're doing. So let's go into a little news before we get into that. Emil, you're coming up with titles for the episode, and it was just why Craig Jones is a motherfucker. I'm like, I think that's a good episode.
Craig Jones is a motherfucker. He's a motherfucker. He's a very dangerous grappler. We'll talk more about that. But speaking of Gordan Ryan, I saw he's gonna be interviewing UFC champ Izzy, right?
Adesanya. Which is funny because Adesanya's been on a couple grappling podcasts. He's been on Matt Byrne with Hinger. That was actually a really insightful interview and actually a really cool interview he did. He's been on Rogan. That was another fun interview. I'm curious to see. I was thinking about this. I don't really want to hear Gordan interview an MMA guy. And then I went, well, Gordan does want to go into MMA and potentially would actually be in the same weight class. I am curious to see kind of where Gordan steers the conversation in what kind of he talks about with Adesanya.
Yeah.
So that was kind of
absolutely
curious. So in other news, this is funny, we're talking about Craig Jones this week. I bought his Z-Guard instructional because it was on sale for Fanatics.
Shit.
Yeah, Rachel was like, I want this instructional. You should buy it. And then she's like, it's on sale. I was like, okay. So I bought that. And I bought actually the Lachlan instructional as well. The 12-hour half guard instructional he put out because it was with the codes, $30. And I was like, I'll spend $30 on a 12-hour Lachlan DVD.
Let me know how that Z-Guard instructional is because
dude, it's good.
That's very clearly a huge difference between Craig and Gordan's styles, and we'll talk about that.
So I'm not through the DVD yet, but it was really funny watching how he basically I like guillotines, and Craig Jones does a one-arm guillotine in a very specific way. And I watched this instructional early. Bought the instructional I think sometime last week after the show, and I watched part of the instructional with Rachel. And then I did a bunch of Craig Jones match study for this episode in preparation. I was like, oh, wow, he uses a bunch of stuff from the section of the DVD that I watched, and I understood what he was doing because I had literally just watched the instructional on it. And it was a really cool contrast that I hadn't done before. So that was cool. In other instructional news, Keith Krikorian, ADCC veteran, basically on everything, has a $2 instructional out. It's 50 techniques. It's an hour and a half, and it's $2. You got to PayPal him or Venmo him, or he has a bunch of different cash apps you can give him. It's a $2 instructional. Has a lot of fun stuff in it, a lot of stuff that I actually like a lot. So it's really cool to see Keith break a lot of that down, and it's $2. So I like supporting content like that. Go buy a $2 instructional from Keith Krikorian.
Yeah, Keith is the man, and he's a very technical thinker. So I'd be curious to see what is on that instructional. Absolutely, $2 is a steal.
Yeah, it's some cool stuff. I've been through a piece of it as well. I've been instructional laden this week. I've gone through a piece of all the instructionals. I'm like, man, these are actually I'm like taking things away from all of what these guys are saying and like kind of their thought process behind how they approach positions. That's really cool and really interesting. I think that's all I have in instructional news. A couple promotions have announced timelines for returning. We have Third Coast Grappling that has announced a June 20th outdoor extravaganza. I think Ryan Maguire, I did a podcast with him this week or end of last week where it was him, Gabriel Argis, and Felipe Pena and myself on a podcast for Third Coast Grappling. You can find that over at Third Coast Grappling Radio, on their YouTube page, on their Facebook, and through all their podcast platforms. If you want to hear us talk to Pena and Argis about like grappling and potentially some matchups that Pena wants to have in the future on Third Coast Grappling. It was a really fun interview that we did, but they have announced a timeline for return. Ryan's going to put out more information as Third Coast kind of gets it, but they're aiming for a June 20th return in like an outdoor venue. So I'm excited for that.
Yeah, hell yeah.
AJP has also announced a timeline for return. I forget exactly what they posted. I think it was an article on their website, maybe, but they announced basically a timeline for return as well. So it's cool that like that promotions are starting to sort of jockey, okay, how are we going to approach the re-entry into competition? I'm really happy that that's on the table now for discussion, as opposed to, you know, we seem to be actually getting through the quarantine. It seems like the numbers in certain areas are coming down. I talked to League Royal today, the promotion out of Korea that we like, and potentially going to be doing some more work with their footage as well, so that's exciting. They are announcing a timeline for return as well, so it's cool to see that potentially we'll actually be able to cover professional grappling again, which is what I like doing on this show. So that's awesome. I'm super excited. I'm having a great week, Emil. In other pro news, sorry.
By the way, California Governor Newsom just announced that they're going to be phasing back in basically across the board into stage 2. So that of their plan to like step the economy back up. So that's good news because California is a huge sector for jiu-jitsu. So that's good news for California gyms and also promotions, and hopefully other states will be not far behind.
Yeah, that's good. I mean, that's the best we can hope for. So, you know, hope everyone does it safely and does it well. Listen to the public health experts and do what they think is the best for safety. Spider Korea has announced their road to black belt. They have announced their bracket for the under 65 kilogram division. If you're unfamiliar with Spider Korea, they're awesome. They gave out the largest purse in jiu-jitsu history last year, $100,000 to the winner of a 16-man division. A 60-man tournament, 8-man division. It was great. They have announced their brown and purple belt qualifier to get into that. And there's some great names. Josh Cisneros is on there. A number of Korean grapplers, both purple and brown. Diego Sodre's on there, brown belt. AOJ fighters on there. It's good. It is on there. It is on our story for Instagram, and it is on the Spider Korea. I think their Facebook page is where it got pulled off of. I got it off of Discord, but
it's on their Instagram. I'm looking at it right now.
Okay. Super excited. May 31st. So this is actually coming up soon. So we're actually probably going to get a chance to cover this in a couple weeks. So I'm very excited about that. We're moving back into professional grappling, Emil. I'm a very happy camper about that.
Me too.
Let's see what else I got. Oh yeah. My birthday's tomorrow. Rachel's birthday is in 3 days. Spencer, our other roommate's birthday is 2 days after Rachel's. So everyone in my house has birthdays back to back to back. That just made me laugh. Not really a news item. It just made me laugh.
Yeah, man. Happy birthday to you all, because I think, it'll all happen before next podcast. So
yeah,
happy birthday, guys.
So we're going to have a nice quarantine birthday where I'm going to probably just edit footage anyway because we're in quarantine. What else are you going to do? Rachel's like, what do you want? I'm like, I don't know, man. Like, I want to go outside and sit on my deck probably because that's what I can do responsibly and legally. So
yeah.
Happy birthday. I think that's all I got out in news. Red Bowie has announced, they are trying to put together a $160,000 team tournament. The details are a little vague on it, but it looks like they are trying to get 16 teams, 2 males, 1 woman, and get sponsors to put up 10 grand for their team, and then have a 16-man fight to win, 16-team fight to win style bracket, and then the winning team gets 160 grand. It just came out this week. Again, that's a lot of money for sponsors to put up, but that's a way to jump back into professional grappling. I would love to cover that. Potentially can get credentialed to go to do that. That is an event I would definitely try to get to. That's 48 grapplers on that card. That would be a really cool event.
Absolutely.
So that's what's announced. Guys are coming back. I got nothing else for news, Emil. Do you have any news this week?
That's it.
All right. So let's move into, what are we calling this segment?
Craig Jones is a motherfucker.
Let's move into Craig Jones as a motherfucker. What we did this week is, so again, like we talked about in the intro of the show, Craig Jones is very, very good. He was able to break Vinny Magalhaes' leg in half, functionally, or break his ankle off his foot. And we thought, okay, potentially there's not a better leg locker in the world than Craig Jones, given the level of guys that he's leg locked in recent past. Let's look at him and contrast the other guy we think is really good, Gordan Ryan, and see how those guys match up.
Craig, now that you mentioned it, I mean, so he has a leg lock win over Vinny and a leg lock win over Felipe Pena. Both guys. Oh wait, no. Sorry, no. That's Tex Johnson. Sorry, I'm confusing my leg lockers. Regardless, Craig Jones is able to leg lock Vinny Magalhaes, break his leg where Gordan was not able to. And so the first thing that we did was say, like, okay, can we compare the two matches, Gordan versus Vinny and Craig versus Vinny, and see where Craig was able to get purchase and actually execute his plan.
Contrast, like, what did Gordan do that Vinny was able to shut down, and what did Craig do that Vinny couldn't shut down? And why? Because Gordan is touted as like one of the best leg lockers, obviously one of the best leg lockers, like leg locks over Cyborg, and like pick your guy. Gordan Ryan's leg locked a lot of dudes. What worked versus this super high level like leg lock defender in Magalhaes, for Jones that didn't work for Gordan.
Right. So do you want to start with Gordan versus Vinny and go from there?
Yeah, let's start with that. So this match happened under the ACBJJ rule set. I think this was a 3-round non-title bout for ACBJJ. ACBJJ, we covered this on the show when it happened back in 2018. I think it was
ACBJJ 13. Yep.
Yeah, and the video is on YouTube. You can go and watch it. Definitely a more slow-paced match, but basically it is a points format, and there are 3 5-minute rounds. After every 5-minute round, there is a minute break, and then they go back out and they reset in a standing position, and after 1 minute, someone can pull, but until then, you have to work for the takedown. And it's pretty standard IBJJF scoring, and the winner, you have to win rounds, functionally, and you can win either by points, or you can win by decision, basically. And there are penalties, and it's got its own kind of unique rule set, but you win rounds, you win the match, you win by sub, you win the whole match.
Right. So it's very clear that Gordan's strategy here is pull guard, sweep, and then work his game. And so Gordan is working a lot from butterfly guard, actually. He is spamming what you call the violin arm lock. Some people call it the straight arm lock. It's that turnover sweep that you get when someone posts their wrist on the top of your neck and you're in butterfly guard. You extend them out, you lock over the elbow joint, and you basically roll them over for the sweep. Right. And so Gordan is squared up with Vinny a lot and using his butterfly hooks basically to try to elevate and get the sweep. And one thing that I noticed was like Vinny was incredibly stable here. He was able to basically, this is where he was able to shut Gordan down. And what he was doing was floating more or less on top of Gordan's knees. So he wasn't letting Gordan get his shins underneath him and use his hooks to elevate, right? Because he was all the way up on his knees. And Vinny was able to post his legs up and basically, start to work. He wasn't getting a head and arm grip like off the bat, but Vinny was able to pass off of this. So he was floating on Gordan's knees, and at one point Gordan tries to go for a sweep, and Vinny just passes immediately into side control. And by that point, because Gordan was going for a violin arm lock, Vinny's arm was already around his head, and Vinny had the head and arm control that he needed to secure that pass. So it was a really excellent sequence.
The sequence is really cool. I think this happens in the first round, right?
Yep, it does.
Yeah. So this puts Vinny up on points, and this is basically what ends up winning the match for Vinny is this, this one pass. But it's a really crafty pass, especially because we see Gordan hit this violent arm lock. I think they call it a gringo sweep. That's what I've heard Tony refer to it as. This violent arm lock sweep a lot, and it's a very, very good sweep for him. We've seen him use it in Quintet. I think we saw him use it versus Barnett, or this is what he set the triangle up off of versus Barnett in their Quintet match. Like, Gordan Ryan is very good at this, and he looks for this a lot. We saw him looking for this in ADCC. We saw him hitting this in ADCC. Like, it's a really common thing he does. So it's really cool that Vinny is able to basically stuff it and then use the positioning of Gordan's arm to pass. It's not something we've seen pretty much anyone else be able to do, and able to actually stop Gordan from regarding.
Right. And so this was a critical component because Gordan was squared up with Vinny. Gordan was on his back trying to elevate, and Vinny was able to pressure down. And that's where Vinny is just incredible. I mean, like, he can generate an immense amount of pressure. He has excellent balance. And this is the big difference between how Gordan approached the Vinny match and how Craig approaches the Vinny match. So, this, as Maine said, this is how Vinny scored the points. This is ultimately how he won all the matches, was just by shutting Gordan down in this way. So if we go over to the Craig Jones Vinny match that just happened last weekend on SUG, Craig Jones has a very different approach to his guard game that I'm beginning to appreciate, and that is he uses his famous Z guard, but it's interesting because he plays an extremely long distance Z guard. He's almost completely flattened out. He doesn't really care if you push his knees together, and he's basically fighting the far arm and doing a lot of posting on the far shoulder to generate space. So every time you see Craig Jones working, his chest is basically fully separated from his opponent. And so Vinny is far off and not able to generate any pressure on top of Craig Jones, which is how this match goes so differently. So Craig is basically able at one point from very far out, he has all the space he needs to do a full inversion, and he flips around and he gets to an Ashigarami with his foot on Vinny's hip. And at this point, the match is over. So basically
it's over.
Well, yeah, exactly. Like any reasonable person within 30 seconds of this would have tapped. So with his foot on Vinny's hip, Craig is able to push Vinny back. Oh, and by the way, one thing that Vinny was able to do to prevent the leg locks against Gordan was tuck his foot that was being attacked underneath his butt. He kept doing it, and Gordan could not extract it. But at this point, Craig is pushing Vinny's hips back with his foot, and he has Vinny's foot that he's attacking, and that's all he needs. And he's able to get the grip and turn up onto his shoulder, and this is where he begins attacking the first inside heel hook that any reasonable person would have tapped to, like, immediately, basically, more or less on him getting the grips. And Vinny is, stubborn. Obviously, he holds through it through two attacks and gets his knees destroyed, or his knee destroyed. But that's the main difference, is Craig is able to push Vinny back and prevent Vinny from tucking his leg underneath him by stepping on that far hip and at one point, even as Maine pointed out, doing that stomping mechanism that you said Ryan Hall talked about.
I think it's a Ryan. Somebody said on Reddit that it was a Ryan Hall thing. That Ryan Hall talks about, like, kind of stomping through the hip in order to generate pressure on the heel hook itself.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, one small thing I forgot about in news. If you're looking at the video show, you notice I have a giant green screen behind me. We are looking at doing some more live stream content. So that's why that's there. We try to test on YouTube this week. We may do a fight companion for UFC 249 that we'll talk about probably in the outro for the show. But I forgot to talk about it in news, so I'm going to throw it in here and completely mess up the flow of this breakdown.
Yeah. So, I mean, but that we basically landed at the big difference, which was that, Gordan was squared up in butterfly with Vinny pressuring on top of him, and he couldn't get his game working, and Vinny was able to tuck his leg underneath him to protect it quite easily. Craig Jones was doing a more long distance Z guard and was able to keep that foot from going underneath Vinny and pushing Vinny backwards in order to get the attack.
So I thought this was so we watched a couple of Craig Jones matches in this. We watched all 3 matches between Craig Jones and Gordan Ryan to kind of prepare for the show. And we also watched Craig Jones versus Leandro Lo. And this is a style of entry that you see Craig Jones using a lot more. And so what I want to kind of contrast when we're talking about this is the difference of the entry. We see Craig Jones at the time of his first ADCC run, back in 2017, I think he was also...
I think he was in 2015, too.
He was in 2015, but he got eliminated in the first round. So
Sure.
his run in 2017, we see him using an entry that's a lot more similar to what the DDS guys were using at the same time, which is what makes the entries in the match at EBI in 2017 and ADCC between Gordan Ryan and Craig Jones so interesting, because they're using entries that are very, very similar. And I thought that was interesting. And then you see nowadays, in 2020, you see Craig Jones entries, they're much more folding. Craig Jones much more wants to go underneath you for the leg and roll through. And Gordan Ryan still typically a lot of times will use that butterfly guard, or like he'll use less of an extreme Z guard to go for the leg. And I think it's interesting that these guys are sort of diverted over time, and that we're seeing much less like entries, and they have different entries now, which I thought was really cool.
What's interesting, too, about the Craig Jones match versus Leandro Lo, we're going to switch to that one, the 2017 ADCC match, was Craig was actually spamming the Kyotera footlocks, if you notice. He was playing De La Hiva a lot and then really trying to rip that out. And he actually, at one point, gets a sweep on Leandro Lo. There weren't any points at this time, but he was able to knock Leandro down with this Kyotera footlock attempt, and he does one later on.
I thought it was really interesting the way he was doing the footlock. He was throwing it. It didn't look like he was throwing it to try to like finish. It looked like he was throwing it to try to set up Leandro to react so that he could pummel his leg underneath. There's one shot, I think it's the last time he tries it. There's a camera angle and you can see that his foot isn't really in the right place to generate the pressure he needs, but he keeps going for that straight ankle lock. And if you're not familiar with the Kyotera footlock, Botinia, I think is what it's called on BJJ Heroes. It is basically a really shallow straight ankle lock. It's what Mikey Musumeci finished the World Finals in 2018 or 19.
And now that I think about it, I think Craig Jones actually hit the Kyotera footlock on Richie Martinez, right?
He did, in Quintet. Yep, at the same at one of the Quintets. I think it might have been the
Quintet 3.
Okay,
it was the same one with Gordan, I think.
Yeah, so I think the match before, one of the matches, but again, these guys all fight each other eventually, and so it blends as to when, especially when it's in the same promotion.
But that was a brutal one. I mean, that's a very dangerous lock, and Richie Martinez, who's extremely flexible, was in a whole lot of pain after that. So
it's a really good footlock, but the interesting thing is you see Craig Jones throwing it here, and he is not in the position you typically see people finish this footlock from. I think Mikey Musumeci has some great tutorials on I think it's on the BJJ Fanatics YouTube page, on exactly where he's putting his foot and how he's generating the pressure. And it doesn't look like it should work, but once you have it done to you, it's super painful. Whenever I had someone do this to me, it just hurts the entire time it's happening. And the pressure, it's not like a standard straight ankle lock that kind of applies slowly. It goes from it feels almost like a toe hold in the way that the pressure is applied in the straight ankle. It goes from I'm good to okay, we're good. It's really interesting.
Yeah, and you could see actually that Craig was using footlocks to generate, even if, as you said, he wasn't necessarily going for the finish, he was threatening them so much, and Leandro was reacting such that Craig was able to generate scrambles. And actually, this is exactly how he beats Leandro, where they're in a leg entanglement, and a scramble initiates, and Craig is on top, and basically starts grabbing Leandro's leg almost like he's, finishing a single leg takedown, trying to get to the back. And Leandro starts scrambling off, lands in turtle, and tries to turtle, but Craig is 3 steps ahead of him and takes the back off of the roll and finishes Leandro famously, basically launching his famous career at this point, and making him completely infamous in the jiu-jitsu.
This is the round of 16.
Yeah.
Like this was, I think Mo Jassim talked about this. I forget, it might have been the Matt Burn podcast that he was on. Basically, how Craig Jones had been eliminated the first round. He was the 16th seed going in. He was this Australian guy. And so they gave him, one of the top seeds, which was Leandro, which is kind of how you bracket typically. And then he upsets Leandro, and it was like, oh, who is this Australian dude that wasn't supposed to beat Leandro Lowe based on
who subbed him,
how it's
who takes his back and chokes him. It was remarkable, and he's definitely chaining leg attacks into scrambles. Got good wrestling, and
One
is
thing
able to.
I love about this match is Craig Jones does something I've kind of stolen from him, is the way that he plays the Z guard is that he looks for you to come into the Z guard and like change your balance point, and then he will pull your leg underneath you and sweep off of it. And he has this really crafty sweep, and Leandro has to keep addressing this particular sweep because Leandro has a really great dynamic passing game, but you can tell that Craig is doing something and Leandro wants to pass in like 2 or 3 specific ways, and Craig kind of keys into this and keeps showing Leandro this thing over and over again because Leandro, it's getting in the way of the pass that Leandro wants to hit on Craig Jones. And it's a cool little meta item that happens there over and over and over again. You can watch Craig kind of figure it out and then capitalize on the scramble.
Cool. Yeah, absolutely. And it's been interesting to see how Craig has developed the skill set and also like grown and adopted new stuff as well. As you said, new leg lock entries and in particular, that inverted entry that he goes to saddle is just, it seems like he can do it to just about anybody.
Yeah, it reminds me a lot of the Gary Tonin entry. Gary Tonin did a really similar entry like this in one of his recent 1FC fights that he won by heel hook. He basically does, instead of rolling with the guy trying to escape with a running man, he rolls underneath and over his own shoulders, like in reverse, to finish the heel hook belly down. And it is a really interesting style of entry because instead of covering the full distance around to try to beat them as they roll for the heel hook, you just go underneath. And Craig Jones sort of cuts you off at the pass in the exact same way, where he goes underneath of you, and then all of a sudden you have to cover extra distance to get out because you both didn't have to roll into position. It's very hard to kind of explain in audio, but go back and watch these matches. You can hopefully see what I'm talking about. In kind of the difference of entry and sort of where he's putting himself in the angle of these entries.
So, do you want to go into the Gordan versus Craig matches?
So, which one do you want to start with? So, there are 3 of them.
That's a good question.
I think we should start in order. So,
EBI?
ADCC.
Oh, okay. Go in reverse chronological. Okay.
Yeah, sorry.
Absolutely.
They would have met. They met. So, these guys were almost met at EBI 11. Oh, that's a piece of news as well. Chael Sonnen has announced Wagner Hosha versus Craig Jones for SUG 14, which is a dope match. It's also a rematch. Wagner Hosha holds a win over Craig Jones in EBI at EBI 11 when Craig and Wagner were on the same side of the bracket and Gordan was on the other side of the bracket. Wagner beats Craig Jones and then Wagner fights Gordan Ryan, and so it would take a whole nother EBI after ADCC for these guys to meet again at EBI. So there's some cool history here.
Craig Jones and Gordan meeting at EBI.
Correct. And then, so it's cool that we're going to see the Wagner versus Craig Jones match rematch because that would be more than 3 years ago from now, or 3 years. That match would have happened almost 3 years ago at this point, and both guys are pretty significantly, different in how they're going to approach the match. Super curious about that. It's on EBI. You should watch it because Wagner and Craig are both awesome dudes to watch. Yeah,
I look forward to covering that at SUG 14. But yeah, okay. So you wanted to start with ADCC 2017.
Correct. In the semifinal, I think semifinal might have been the quarterfinals.
Yeah.
I think it was the semifinals.
Absolutely.
Between Gordan Ryan and Craig Jones.
Yeah, just outstanding match. And what we saw was, actually both guys alternating playing guard and passing. And when we saw Craig Jones, we saw him completely executing that kind of like long distance Z guard that we were just talking about, where he's able to keep distance, not allow any kind of head control for aggressive passing, and going for those kind of inverted entries. And it was a very close match, very very kind of like even match for a lot of it.
And then Gordan Ryan does what Gordan Ryan does, passes, gets mount, and then hits a beautiful like step to the side head and arm choke. It also, in this match, it looked like Craig Jones got really tired as soon as Gordan Ryan like started really putting the pressure in for the passing. And that was sort of the most telling thing, I think, when we talk about this match the last time on the show, one of our first bonus episodes. We actually talked about this before when we've kind of touched on the topic of Gordan Ryan versus Craig Jones. We talked about kind of the change in the pacing here. Did you see Craig sort of like get tired, Gordan passes, and then Gordan very kind of quickly after that finishes him with the head and arm?
Yeah, he grinds it out. I think that's exactly where Craig, that's when you take away the space that Craig has. I mean, this is true of like most grapplers, but certainly, Craig relies on having that space in order to be able to do his inversions and entries into his A game,
especially in 2017.
Especially in 2017, yeah. And Gordan is able to shut that down eventually. And once Gordan gets a grip, and he does not give an inch, he does not yield an inch at all, and very systematically, isolates that arm, gets into the head and arm position, and locks it away. And we actually see something very similar happen again at Quintet 3 years later when they meet up again.
So super interesting. Again, actually, I love this match. I have a couple gifs from this match that I've saved over the years. One of them is basically the way that Gordan Ryan sets up this particular head and arm. It's just super smooth, super directed. He windshield wipers his leg all the way over and cuts across. Like from a technical perspective, it's just a beautiful choke. And it's really cool that both these guys went on to have, the careers that they've had and continue to have. And we're seeing that match from 2017, and they've met twice more, and it's been great both times.
So it's interesting to see that, it's like weird jujitsu math rather, where like, Craig Jones is able to keep separation with Vinny in order to get the leg lock. Gordan is able to take away that separation and pass and submit Craig, but then Vinny is able to, squash and shut down Gordan. So it's like, it's this funny kind of like, the math doesn't always add up.
Jiu-jitsu
It's stylistic match. Style makes matchups.
And also rule sets. The ACB rule set versus a sub-only rule set versus an EBI versus ADCC versus a Quintet rule set where there are no heel hooks and there's a ban on the close guard for more than 20 seconds. People talk about kind of how they don't like that grappling has all these disparate rule sets. I really like that because it makes you sort of like, there's no easy way to codify it, like, oh, this is how you do it, this is how it's done. It's like, well, this is how it's done in EBI because this is the sum of best practices. But in ADCC, where it's going to favor wrestling and top control, you want to do these sort of things. But in something like IBJJF or something like AJP, you're going to want to do something different. It's cool. I like that grapplers compete in all of these different rule sets and adapt to like what is the best practice for that rule set. So we see this big diversity and we see less of a specialization now because guys are kind of forced to compete in 10 different rule sets.
Absolutely.
And these guys have met in 3 different rule sets. ADCC, very different rule set than EBI. EBI, fairly different rule set to Quintet.
Yep. Do you want to talk about EBI now?
Let's talk about EBI.
Go for it.
I loved this match because it's I think a couple months after these guys met at ADCC. And this match was hype. Like, when this got set, again, I have a special place in my heart for this time in grappling because this is right when I got super into professional grappling. Like, I was into it, I'd watched it, I enjoyed it, but right around ADCC 2017 is when I went off the deep end and, like, spent all of my free time watching pro grappling, and so there's like a special place in my heart for like this 6-month period when I just fanned out. So these guys were scheduled to meet in the finals. Craig Jones had run through, I think, everyone on his side of the bracket in like 90 seconds.
Something like that. He just submitted everybody. I remember that. Yeah.
And it was just he was on a tear.
Yeah, and just from a broad strategy standpoint, was just had expended way less energy getting to where he needed to be.
And that was the discussion in the finals. It was like, hey, Gordan has had way more match time. He's going to be more tired. Although they just fought, now the odds are shifted to Craig's favor because, yeah, he's had so little mat time. He went in, he subbed, next guy. And these guys meet in the finals. And we saw a lot of the same thing that we saw in ADCC because, again, these guys just fought. They're not going to substantially change their game in a couple months. And so we see a lot of the same entries. And you see both guys being able to deal with each other in a different way. Like the mistakes that Craig made there are not present in this match. You see entries from both guys. You see pass attempts from both guys, sweep attempts from both guys. Both guys are giving a little bit to try to get their entries. And it's really cool in a couple months that you can see that dynamic shift. And also EBI, there are no points, so both guys are going for the sub and going for what they want to go for.
Yep. Yeah. And, this time Craig was, able to completely maintain his space when he was playing guard. And, Gordan was not able to take that away and implement his game. And it goes to overtime. And famously, Craig Jones probably broke Gordon's arm, but Gordan didn't tap and escaped.
Oh my
God.
Then go back if you haven't seen that final. Go back and watch that. Is it second round or third round overtime? I
can't remember which round it was.
One of the rounds of overtime. Craig Jones armbars Gordan Ryan, and Gordan Ryan hitchhikers like no one hath hitchhikered before. A couple guys have. But, actually, Vinny has a really famous match versus Verdum where he does the exact same thing. Beautiful defense for the armbar. And Gordan gets out and then ends up submitting Craig Jones. And it's a pretty wild moment in jiu-jitsu. To watch it live was pretty special. And then after the interview, Gordan Ryan talks about, he goes, I think maybe TJ DeSantis is interviewing him. And he goes, did he get you with the armbar? Or something like that. Ask some question. And Gordan goes, we'll know tomorrow. Which, by the way, if anyone ever says that about a sub, it means you got. And you'll just, deal with the pain. No, because if you didn't get got, you'll say you didn't get got. But if your answer is, we'll know tomorrow, you got a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially with someone like Gordan.
Yeah. Super hype moment. Super great storyline, especially leading out of ADCC. You have this new phenom, Craig Jones, that runs through an entire bracket and then faces the guy that just beat him at ADCC after his run, now the ADCC champion. It's a really cool storyline, and it was a really special moment in professional grappling that sort of launched both these guys even further into sort of jiu-jitsu stratosphere for grappling. Really important time, and also a fun technical match to see how these guys kind of matched up. So let's talk about the third time these guys matched up.
Quintet 3. Oh my God. Quintet 3 is just, as an event, just also near and dear to my heart. Tremendous event. Team tournament had 10th Planet, Polaris, Team Alpha Male. It was just a complete and amazing shit show.
And you had Misha Tate not knowing who Gordan Ryan was.
Yeah.
On top of that, calling him Jordan Ryan.
Yeah.
Thinking he could really be something or something. It was hilarious for that as well. This is the one that Gordan Ryan triangled Josh Barnett, right?
Yeah, Gordan Ryan just fucked everybody up. I mean, this was Team Gordan Ryan, basically.
Yeah, it's Team Alpha Male, and then Gordan Ryan got announced as the late replacement, and everyone kind of went, that's not really fair.
Yeah, absolutely.
You have a bunch of really good grapplers, and then you have Gordan Ryan. It's like, all right, Uriah Faber. That's not that fair.
But Team Polaris was dope too. Yeah. I mean, that was a super entertaining team with Craig Jones on it. And so eventually, Craig Jones and Gordan Ryan face off. And this is where, I mean, certainly the Quintet rule set is unique in that, fighters, especially ones who are super dangerous, can accumulate a lot of consecutive mat time, because if they're getting wins, they keep going and going and going. And so Craig Jones was maybe not super fresh. I mean, Gordan Ryan had also had many matches as well, and this time, oh my fucking God, Gordan just not as in the move, but just as in the animal, fucking anacondas, Craig Jones. It is like watching a snake squeeze the life out of a small mammal. It was insane. And it's probably the most grindy we've seen Gordan. Generally, Gordan will, he's incredibly adept at like switching directions based off of, he's probably got a huge list of techniques in his like technique tree, and so he's able to adapt very easily. But in this case, he just fucking grinds through it. And
I thought that was really interesting, though, kind of as a thought for why Gordan did that, because I think at this point these guys had trained together a bit. Like, they know each other. They faced each other a couple times. They prepared for each other a couple times at this point. And so it's interesting to see Gordan kind of shift that game so significantly from the first 2 times they fought to this time, because this time does not look anything like the first 2 times these guys faced. Again, he knows Craig is a little tired, and he knows, look, I'm going to put a ton of pressure into this guy. Gordan is the bigger guy, probably the stronger guy, and he really just imposes that in this match. And I thought it was a really interesting. Most guys you don't see in MMA and in Jiu-Jitsu be able to significantly shift how they approach matches. The fighter that you are, for the most part, is the fighter that kind of you're going to be. And that's why it was so interesting to watch a guy like McGregor face Diaz the second time, because he fought against type. And he kind of approaches the match in a very different way. Gordan Ryan sort of did the same thing here. It's not, the match we typically see from Gordan. He does different stuff.
He did what he needed to do to efficiently shut Craig down and impose his game on it. And what he did was basically do an insanely heavy top half guard head control pressure pass, right? And then he like he did back in ADCC, begins attacking an arm triangle, which gets Craig to react. And at this point, Gordan is able to switch from S-mount, take the back, and get rear naked choke.
Like a short choke, basically.
Yeah.
He just there's no lock-in with the elbow. This is like forearm over face and jaw, kind of under the chin a little bit, and just goes palm to palm and just starts cranking. And Craig doesn't fight it too hard, because you see, like, it's one of those, like, okay, like, I am not going to be able to fight this effectively.
He's got gut. Yeah. And it's probably the gooniest that we've seen Gordan, I think, ever. But he knew what he had to do in order to efficiently beat Craig Jones. So really interesting. Craig's back is to the mat basically this entire time. Like, with the exception of when he rolled to avoid the arm triangle. That was it.
So there's one more match I want to talk. You think about anything else on this one?
Mm-mm.
Cool match, kind of an end to a trilogy. We're going to see these guys fight. I was actually, not they're on the same team, I actually don't know.
And also, Gordan appears to be fighting heavier and Craig lighter. So.
Yeah, they're separated by 1 weight class. I mean, Craig is still at 88. He still makes a pretty big cut to go to 88, but I just don't really see him going up to under 99.
Right.
And Gordan potentially will go up even further. He's talked about it, and again, I don't really think he will, because typically we saw, like, during the João Gabriel Rocha match at, was it not BJJ Stars, it was at
I can't remember.
I don't remember either. The João Gabriel Rocha match, he sort of struggled with the size of João Gabriel Rocha for the entry. He blew his own knee out in his entry, and so I doubt we'll see him go significantly heavier, but we saw him deal with Josh Barnett fine, although Josh Barnett is not the same caliber of grapplers as a guy like Buchecha, who Gordan Ryan really couldn't get underneath at ADCC. It's interesting, but these guys may face each other, they may not, but we got 3 really, really great matches, really exciting matches out of them. There's one more match that Emil and I picked on before that we want to talk about, Craig Jones, and it's the Mason Fowler match at ADCC.
Oof.
Flow Grappling recently
awesome.
put this matchup for free on YouTube, Craig Jones versus Mason Fowler, and it is, I think the technical term is hot fire.
It's dope.
Dude, it's a great
so
match.
Dope. And this match it showcases Craig's versatility, because, we've been focusing a little bit more on his leg attacks because that's what happened with Vinny. But Craig actually is extremely dangerous with the guillotine and front headlock, and his wrestling is pretty great. And that is completely on display in the Mason Fowler match. Basically, we see.
And how he even talks about it on commentary. that, one of the criticisms of Craig Jones, in ADCC 2017, his earlier career, was that he was always a one-dimensional leg locker. That is not the case at ADCC 2019. We see him, even in Kasai, hit a really great Harigoshi on Dante Leon. Like, his stand-up, you see it on display here. You see his wrestling on display. And in this Mason Fowler match, it goes, oh yeah, Craig Jones has a dynamism and has an ability to play top game and to pass and to finish from the top that guys sort of sleep on. And we've seen it in things like Grapple Fest when we see Craig Jones and like other things that we've covered Craig Jones in. But this ADCC match, I think, is the best display of sort of the dynamism that Craig Jones has as not just a leg locker.
Yeah. And, threatening extremely hard the guillotine. In fact, he had a pretty deep guillotine on Gordan at
Quintet.
At Quintet,
yeah. Immediately,
and that's how Gordan was able to get such heavy control. Was Gordan was able to weather the storm somehow. It looked fucking brutal, and he was already set up where he could get head control and do pressure passing past the half guard. But what we see is,
I have one quick thing about that. So, in Craig Jones' Z-Guard DVD, that is in the first, 20 minutes. That particular guillotine that he's doing, both on Mason Fowler and on Gordan Ryan, and there's some little details on it about how he finishes it with the one arm and how he finishes it, on the side that are crazy. And so it was super cool to watch that DVD and then immediately do all this tape study and go, oh yeah, there's a bunch of places in his career that he is using this grip sequence and this finish style. And it was really cool to see him teach it and then watch him use it in competition as we did this tape study.
Yeah, incredible. And he hits it. I don't even know how many times against Mason Fowler, in completely different areas. He's doing. He basically is one of those people that can attack the front headlock from just about anywhere, and he ends the Mason Fowler match with Mason shooting a takedown attempt. And him getting the guillotine off the mat with 35 seconds left. It was incredible.
Yeah, and he just basically ends up finishing from out. You think the ref might stop them, and then you see Craig trying to finish. And I think I was either mat side. I know I was mat side for this. I might have been on the other side of the mat while this was happening. It was crazy to see because you saw it seemed like the ref was going to stop it, and you see Craig crank more, and then the ref pulls off a little bit, and he's able to get the tap. It was a really, really cool moment after a super hotly contested match in the quarterfinals of the 88 kilogram division, ADCC 2019. Watch this whole match. It is for free on Flow Grappling's YouTube page. It is such a good match. Again, the dynamism of wrestling, the up and down motion, the way that Craig Jones continues to grab for the front headlock. We see his passing on display here and how he is electing to pass around Mason Fowler. We see him deal with a bottom position and the top position, the introduction of points in the match. It's a really, really good match, and it always be reminded that a lot of your top grapplers, although they're known for one thing, they can do it all. They can do a lot of stuff, and Craig Jones, specifically because he had such a contrast early career being thought of as just a leg locker, when you watch the ADCC 2019 match, it goes, oh yeah, he has all of these other tools and all of these other submission chokes. He has a bunch of rear naked choke wins. He has a bunch of guillotine wins. He can do it all.
Absolutely. Just tremendous grappler. One of my favorites to watch again. There was a little while where, Craig had matches that were slower, but that had more to do with his opponents, Matheus Diniz and Husamar, who were just unwilling to engage with him. But yeah, Craig is a dynamo, and seems to be improving year on year, which is just an incredible thing to watch. I think
definitely is improving. We would have not seen the performance he had against Mason Fowler in 2017. Yeah. The way that match wouldn't have been just what he did to Vinny. I don't think we would have seen that in 20, looking back at this footage, the way that he was entering, the style of how he was doing it, how he was playing with the Z shield and inverting and getting the leg. You look at the way he does it versus Leandro, who's a very good passer. Again, got a very different style of passing than Vinny. And then you look at him now in that Vinny match. very, very different grappler.
You just reminded me. Did you see BJJ Fanatics T-shirt?
Which one?
The new one. The new one. It's it just says leg locks work. It has a cross on it, and then it has like 4/26/2020.
That's amazing, dude. I kind of want the Bernardo shirt, the huge honor shirt.
Oh man,
it's a picture of Bernardo Faria, and it says "huge honor for me," because if you know Bernardo, again, every video he basically introduces with "Okay, guys," and then he says, it's a huge honor for me to talk to whatever grappler it is, and it's always like he's always very, very respectful of the people that he has there, and it's always really cool. And so I love that Bernardo is leaning into it, and he's posting it on Reddit and other stuff. I love he's leaning into the memes that people have made about him, and like taking it in good fun.
He's just the friendliest, most enthusiastic guy. Yeah, exactly.
Like the best dude. It's amazing. So I don't have anything else. As far as Craig Jones, go back and watch all these matches. A lot of them are free. Some of them are not. Again, I have Fight Pass, ESPN Plus, Flow Grappling, YouTube. Pick I don't know, Disney Plus, like Netflix, Hulu. I pay for more streaming services than any man should to watch fights and Rick and Morty. But a lot of them are free. You can find most of them online. Fight Pass as well. So do you want to talk about the Craig Jones versus Wagner rematch, or do you want to save that for closer when that happens, or do you want to talk about UFC 249?
Let's save that. Let's save the Wagner Craig Jones Sug 14 match for when it's closer to Sug 14. Yeah, dude, Jesus, UFC 249. I think we talked about it last week.
We talked about it a little bit, but I may be doing a fight companion for it now on the Grappling Rewind YouTube page. I'm not Joe Rogan, but I have the tech now to do it, and so we may be trialing it out, see if there's interest in doing it. Again, no one can watch it with their friends anyway, so tune with the Grappling Rewind, at least me, and we can all bullshit and watch fights together and have a great evening, because if I'm going to spend $70 on a pay-per-view, I want to watch it with friends.
Yeah, absolutely.
So the people the listeners that we have of the show, feel free to tune into that. That's probably going to be on YouTube. If that doesn't happen, I apologize, but we're gearing up to try to make it happen. I've just got to learn how to use all the streaming stuff correctly and get it done. But it's going to be a dope card. Do you want to start with the interim title fight, Tony Ferguson versus Justin Gaethje?
Yeah, that's going to be that's a bloodbath. That's a guaranteed bloodbath. I mean, both of those guys are so game to fight.
I think the big X factor is, does the second weight cut in 3 weeks affect Tony Ferguson?
Yeah, or does any kind of freak injury or whatever take him out? Knock on wood, it does not. Yeah, that's the big question. Who knows? But it's going to be... Tony's such a bizarre fighter. It's going to be awesome. It's just going to be a total fucking bloodbath. Who else is on this card?
Cruz versus Cejudo?
Oh my God, yes.
That's for the bantamweight title.
Yeah. Yep. So Cruz is coming back. We'll see how it goes. Cejudo has got crazy fucking pressure. So
I
don't know.
think if that Marlon Moraes match looks anything like this match, I'm curious to see, because I think Cruz can get Cejudo down, but I don't know if he can keep Cejudo down. And I don't know if he will elect to try to get Cejudo down, or if he will just try to have a ranged kickboxing/boxing match like he had with Dillashaw. Like, I'm really curious stylistically how these two guys match up. Cruz and Henry are somewhat similar sized, although I think again, this is completely out of my ass because I talk about grappling for the most part, not MMA. I think Cruz is probably going to be longer, but I'm curious to see how he's going to use his reach, because Cruz tends to throw like relatively looping punches, but he tends to off-step and like hit you on the outside arc of the punch, whereas Cejudo's boxing is like pretty straightforward boxing. I'm very curious to see if Cejudo approaches it much like the Garbrandt match, but I don't think Cejudo's technical boxing is nearly kind of on the level that Garbrandt's boxing is when Garbrandt chooses to use it. So very interesting stylistic
Garbrandt
matchup.
doesn't lose his fucking head. But yeah, I don't know, because like Cruz, it also looks like Cruz like can't cut the angles the same way he used to when he was like younger, and that's where he generates his offense, is like cutting those weird fucking angles all the fucking time.
He like loops in with the head movement in and out.
Yeah.
So
we'll see. I'm excited for that matchup. I think it's going to be incredible.
I honestly think it'll be really interesting to see if Cejudo tries to take him down, to either prove a point or to like.
I think he does. Yeah, I think absolutely.
The interesting thing is we haven't seen a ton of passing from Cejudo.
Yeah, but he doesn't need to. He can just control it and dictate. But absolutely, I think that's his best weapon. So why wouldn't he do that?
I don't know. I'm just curious. Like again, Cejudo's the guy that's always like really interesting to see how he approaches certain fights. I was super impressed for the Marlon Moraes fight. Just like how he decided to deal with Marlon and like take the title off of him. How he got crushed in the first round and then was able to come back in the second and third round, and just like turn it around completely. It was just a crazy turnaround that you typically don't see in world title fights, especially moving up a weight class. I think he did relinquish the 125 belt. That was supposed to be Benavidez versus Figueiredo, but Figueiredo missed weight and then beat Benavidez. So I think they're going to rematch. Again, I've been out of MMA for about 6 weeks because all the MMA podcasts I listen to, I'm not listening to a ton of podcasts right now, so I've not kept up with this. That'll be a fun matchup. We got Verdum versus Olenek.
That's going to be fucking amazing. That's going to be amazing. I think we're all praying for a freak Ezekiel, just to see the shit show.
So Olenek, I watched some tape on Olenek for this. Olenek has a sub over Krokop with that Keisagatame that he hit, that Josh Barnett hit on Dean Lister.
Hit Dean Lister.
Yes. He has a finish over Krokop. That was actually Krokop's last loss, and then Krokop went on a 10-fight win streak and then retired.
That's so dope.
So I think it's really interesting. And we've seen Olenek go for that before in the UFC, but I don't think he'll be able to do that versus Verdum. I feel like Olenek, they go to the ground, and for some reason I feel like Verdum like ground and pounds him. I think Verdum probably is going to reverse him and then ground and pound. Olenek is a really risky grappler on the ground. He's got ridiculous squeeze. So it could be like a Ben Rothwell versus Josh Barnett where he go choked him. But I just feel like Olenek takes a few too many risks versus a guy that is as crafty on the ground as Verdum. I mean, Verdum literally won the title off of Kane, off of like a shot that Kane took, and then he guillotined Kane. Like, Verdum is a very good grappler. Like, we've seen him fight Overeem like that. Like, I just don't see a pathway on the ground for Olenek's victory because Olenek is not really a prolific ground and pounder. He really wants to sub you versus Verdum can sub you, can grapple. His scrambles are good, and he can ground and pound. So,
question, Maine. Do you think Olenek is the gooniest?
Man, that chest compression, but he's got technique though. Like, he's really, really good. Like, we talk about goon a lot. Like, a goon choke or any goon move is like when it's not really there, and you just make it work.
Is there any move more goonier than a fucking Nogi Ezekiel choke?
There's not.
They're
literally like not. By definition, it's like, oh yeah, he gooned him. What did he hit him with? Nogi Ezekiel. I'm like, that is correct.
Aside from maybe like a fucking like can opener or something, like, you know.
Yeah, I think a can opener is almost equally as goon. But like again, and goon, by the way, is not disparaging. Like it can be used awesome. Disparaging when you're talking about like a guy that doesn't have any technique. That's just like okay, he's just crushing my head with his leg. He's not choking me. He's just trying to like head crush me. That's like a goon move. But when guys have technique and can goon stuff, it's a beautiful, beautiful thing to watch.
So
like
beautiful.
There are few things that are greater in this world than watching a dude that like that shouldn't work. Holy shit, he made it work.
Holy shit, he's doing it to the top level competition. Yeah, on a regular basis. And they can't stop it.
He has 12 or 13 wins by that. Again, I think he'll honestly get a chance to set it up. Like, I think he goes for it on Verdum. I just think Verdum is like a crafty enough grappler and like knows what to do well enough to not let him get deep enough. The other thing that could happen is that Verdum doesn't respect it because it's not a real choke.
I think there's no way that happens.
I just think Verdum is a veteran enough that he's savvy.
Yeah.
He knows.
He's a fucking world champ, dude.
Yeah, that Olenek has 13 or 12 wins by Nogi Ezekiel. He's gonna go.
Respect Verdum, man. Yeah. IBJJF world champ, UFC heavyweight champ, fucking triangled goddamn
Fedor.
the last emperor. Like, yes, he has chops.
I mean,
He has
I've made this
chops.
argument for years that that you can make a solid argument. I've made the argument too that by the numbers, Verdum is the greatest heavyweight ever. By the number, until DC came along and fucked it up and Stipe came along. But like before that, you can make an argument based on who he beat up until
That's
like
literally every
2017.
heavyweight ever.
Up until 2017, you can make an argument that Verdum beating Kane, because like that was the title. When Kane had the title, it was like, oh, Kane's the best. I was like, well, Kane's fought like 5 guys in like 7 years.
Yeah.
So, like, he didn't fight a ton of diverse competition, and the first junior fight, getting head kicked, and then Verdum subbing Kane and having a win over Fedor. It was like, it's either Kane, Verdum, or Fedor, and Verdum has wins over both Fedor and Kane. Again, not in their prime, not like when they were the dude they were, but, he has title wins off of both. It's very, very... The numbers, you're a numbers guy. Back me up here as I ramble on about why I love Verdum.
Well, I mean, the numbers don't work in heavyweight because, like, up until Stipe, the most number of defenses was what, 2?
I think it was 2, and then Stipe has 3 defenses.
There's no numbers. There's no fucking numbers in heavyweight. It's like that's what's beautiful about heavyweight is someone with a motherfucking like nasty fucking overhand can take the goddamn division. So
Ngannou can just end you with an overhand.
Yeah. Forget it.
I think it was Schaub that said, he goes,
Dude.
you're only ever two wins away from a title shot at heavyweight.
Have you seen the fucking training video of Mike Tyson?
Dude, 53 years old. It's a 5-second clip. I want to talk about this in news, but we're in the outro section hard right now in the show.
Yeah.
I thought about that. I don't know, honestly, because it's like the 2 body shots are good, the headshots are good, the body shot's good, but the turnover and how he generates power with that cross is absurd.
It's like, that would kill a man. That would
kill me. I'm a small human. I walk around fat, 151. Like, I would die. Mike Tyson hitting me at 50 plus years, half a century.
Oh,
He's
yeah.
still
He'd
around.
decapitate me. He'd take my head right the fuck off.
Jeez, I saw that. I was like, and again, you see him through the combo get a little slower, but the way that he drives and generates that hook is absurd. Or sorry, it's a cross to the head is just absurd. It's like kind of makes you want to go, I would love to see Mike Tyson take like just one more fight.
Dude, Chael is inviting him to Sug. He's trying to get him to fight on Sug.
That's not gonna happen.
Oh,
dude, I'd pay for a Mike Tyson fight, like a pay-per-view. Like, Iron Mike gonna strap it on one more time. Like, I'll watch 30 seconds of this.
Yeah, this freak show. Absolutely.
It'd be amazing. Yeah. So Mike Tyson still got it, and like everyone, there's every couple years, footage of Mike Tyson hitting pads or the bag comes out, and everyone's like, "Oh goddamn, he still has it," and you're like, "Yeah, he's Mike Tyson."
Not just his pad work, but like I saw actually a different clip of him a week or 2 ago. Where he was just doing like head movement.
Oh, is it the bar? Is it the footage of the bar?
It was like fucking crazy, yeah. Like he's still so dumb fast.
Yeah, there's footage of Mike Tyson at a bar or something. Maybe it might actually been a UFC event, and he's showing a fighter or somebody like some technique really briefly, and he just he dipped, and then he throws like 2 punches, and you're like, oh my god, you're like 48 in this clip, and. Yeah. You still move. You have ridiculous like peekaboo style head movement. It's absurd. I love Mike Tyson. I love that he's just like a weed guy now. He grew a beard out and just like has a weed ranch. Apparently.
I'm glad that he's figured it out and started to
live his best
kind of
life.
Like rehabilitate himself. Yeah.
So I mean, I have a whole lot. Let's see what else. So we'll probably talk about UFC next week. I'm not sure what else we're kind of having on the docket. We have a Marcelo episode that's in the can that we're kind of planning on recording. That may be next week. That will most likely be 2 weeks from now. I think the next event scheduled is the qualifier for Spider on the 31st of May. We may have an event in front of that, but I don't know. Emil, I'm going to ask, do you know?
No idea.
Okay. I usually curate the event list on the Grappling Rewind, but I haven't looked at it in honestly, probably 4 weeks because everything just got canceled. I'm just going to basically show up on the screen here if you're looking at the camera. Like, basically everything here got canceled. So it was just like the entirety of like end of March, April, and May canceled. So I just stopped curating the list for a little bit here, but stuff's coming back. I'm going to start curating again. I'm going to update it on the Grappling Rewind website. We still have a website. I'm probably going to put an article out this week as well. I'm not going to tell you what it's going to be about yet, but it will probably be up there. I'm going to get back into writing, get back into editing some video content, going to do more live stream stuff. We got some fun content coming out for you in quarantine. What do you got, Emil?
That's it.
So, what's your week look like?
It's just more fucking yoga. I'm trying to not be a stiff piece of shit.
Can you touch your feet
trying
yet?
to stay active, so I can't. Well, I can fold down and my hands can touch the ground for the first time in my life. So that's good.
Impressive. So do yoga, heal your injuries. I still can't touch my feet because of my back. I would love to do that again at one point in my life, but we'll see.
Hey.
Buy intensive instructionals. I've got nothing else. I hope everyone's week is going great. My family is going to have a great birthday week. I'm going to eat cupcakes. I got nothing out. Be safe. Have fun. As always on the show, I'm your host, Maine with the Grappling Rewind, joined with my co-host,
Emil.
and we are the Grappling Rewind. We will see you on the mats whenever that is. Have a great week. If you like the show, please consider sharing it on Facebook with the folks at your gym. It's the best way that we grow the show, and we really appreciate it. You can reach out to us on email.
We also have Instagram, we have Facebook, we have Twitter, we have Google+.
Until that shuts down.
We have a website.
If you have an event you would like to have us cover, please let us know. If you have a name, like most people do, and you'd like to have us stop butchering it,
Let us know.
reach out to us. The show is also available on YouTube, Spotify, in addition to iTunes and every other podcast service. We very much appreciate your time, and thank you.